Welcome to the First, the Last, the Nerdom podcast, where shadows reign and vengeance calls. Tonight we dive into the 1996 cult classic, The Crow, a haunting tale, a spectral avenger rising from the darkness to seek justice. Set against a backdrop of gothic despair, we explore the film's chilling visuals and its timeless themes of love and loss. Join us as we traverse this dark odyssey through grief and retribution.
Hey,
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm good, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful intro,
Great.
by the way. That you
Mhm.
acted that out. Very much appreciated. And as Tom mentioned, we are the First Last Nerdom, and I'm Mike ML.
Yep, and I'm Gothic Tom for the this evening.
Yep. And then next week we'll get the. We've had to do some switcheroos around with the different platforms that we use, but in any case, we've standardized on this one. And almost got everything we built, but the name tags will be the next one. That'll be next week. So, but we're getting there.
Yep.
We're getting there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, we're picking The Crow this week. I'm very much excited. It's one of my favorite movies. I kind of held off on a lot of my favorite movies till we sort of solidified and got everything down.
Sure. Yeah.
We tested things out with some of the, but we're starting to get into the meat of the stuff that we love, and we're getting our groove here. So I thought it would be a perfect time to kind of tackle this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this is a fun one. I'm glad you did, because at some point I probably would have picked this one, but there's so many more that I'm interested in. But this, I guess, how to set the table. One of the ways I haven't really seen it framed as, but I think it does it justice, is this is in '94, and the comic book that it was based on was in 1989. Well, I think we'll kind of, this was kind of before comic book to the big screen really got going and started its own kind of wave. But we'll get into that here in a moment. But first, I'm gonna drop us down into our main mode here and talk about us. Who are these two cool dudes with very interesting lighting and good sound across the board? But in any case, we do this thing called for the First Last Nerdom, weekly show where we cover comic book, horror, science fiction, pretty much anything that can have a nerd base around it, and fighting over it, or lovingly, of course, and sometimes very, very passionately. But we have 214 videos. This is going out live tonight for the Crow. So thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. I don't have any on the counter yet, but that counter is not reliable, so it'll go from like 0 to 30 and then it'll kind of catch up to itself. But in any case, you can always find us here on YouTube, where we do our thing. Catch out the last 2 weeks that we had Outland, which we're very proud of, and got up to 90 views or so. And then the one last time that we did live, which is Hitchcock, where we hit 306 views. So thank you very much for watching that. If you could give us a wonderful like, we would greatly appreciate it. That would be greatly appreciated for sure. Oops,
Yeah,
there we go.
I've noticed when I start looking for our channel, do a search. YouTube's been dropping us further and further. Our channel name, it keeps dropping further and further when I search for it. So I probably I don't know how YouTube does that, but if you can give us a subscribe if you haven't subscribed to us yet, that might
free.
boost us up a little bit.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate it. And as always, you will find that Tom heads up our social media division over there on Reddit. That is our user. I don't know why that's obnoxious, but you can find us at FirstLastNerdom over there, as well as on X. Tom again heads up our account on the Twitterverse, as it were. And generally, whenever we have a new video, or whether it's him or myself covering a main event or a smaller, we will put it out on Twitter. Also, Tom would love to answer any questions or engage in any wonderful nerd conversations with you all out there. We'd appreciate it very much if you could give us a follow. I am also of ApeIt.Ink fame, that's my publication of record where I put all my heavier hitting stuff on there. Some entertainment, some political, all that current events, that kind of thing. Whatever I want to, pretty much. I'm also available on X, ApeIt_Ink. That's the handle. Say hi, whatever. Tell me what your favorite comedy sci-fi is. If you see me out in the wild. But for this week, we have a lot here. Oh, and that's we have a very special treat for you later in the show. But we have a very good. I've been trying to find a better website for finding these things, like just displaying movie information and things. And I'm kind of glad I forced myself to, because The Crow is kind of like one of those movies that has such punch with it and background. There's so much history, including other derivatives that we may or may not get into. But you can't beat the original. This is like I kind of left off in the first part of the show. I mentioned that this is kind of like one of the very first serious comic book to big screen movies that became its own kind of legend very easily. Unfortunately, for very sad reasons, and also for the quality of work that it is. We're kind of starting off here with very high praise, if you haven't noticed, and I'm glad you picked this one this week. And you just kind of, we don't quite know where sometimes we kind of have a good idea of like what the next few picks will be, and sometimes it's just like, hey, what do you think? He's like, The Crow. All right, yes, absolutely. But I'll let you take it from there and kind of fill in the gaps. I have no doubt that maybe one of the draws for you here, I'm sure it would be the same for myself, is the music is great. That's just one thing. Music is great.
It was one of those things that it was sort of like a movie made for me. It was highly anticipated. I was a huge comic book fan, still am today. So I was very familiar with the comic book. I at that point during the 90s, I got everything. The comics kind of got bloated with the Rob Liefelds and the Todd McFarlanes, and I was in my 20s. I thought I was above all that childish superhero stuff, but I still loved comic books. So I was getting into DC Vertigo with the Sandman, and getting kind of gothic, and I wanted to read all the independent comic books and whatnot. So The Crow, and I was getting into darker music. I was getting into, I was always into heavy metal, but my friend in college got me into all this gothic music and industrial music. So when and I was also reading, a lot of horror at the time, splatterpunk, and I found out, they were making the movie The Crow based off the comic book I love with the music I love, and the script writers were two of the big splatterpunk writers, John Shirley and David Scow.
Oh, no kidding.
And so I was over the moon with this movie. I was ready for it. I was primed and ready.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Yeah, and we thank you so much for that. We have one viewer out there on Twitter, so thank you for viewing us there. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But you had mentioned before the comic book, so this was kind of a natural throwing down the ball and knocking down all the pins for you. Suffice it to say, I would imagine.
Yeah, the comic book, it was, being a young adult, going through all the different things young adults do. You get your emotions go from all over the place, and this book being about love and love lost and revenge and all those weighty feelings that you experience during that time. It just and the art was sort of edgy. It wasn't meticulously drawn like the superhero comic books of that day, where it got down to the excruciating detail. This was more of a kind of a moody piece with more expressionistic kind of looks to it. Kind of amateurish, but it has a style to it that really draws you in.
Very much so. It has its own, and the comic is very different. There is a difference between the comic and the movie. So
Yeah.
I believe the gentleman Ryan, God help me out on the last name here. Good grief, where did I put it? I just had it up here. Oh, Ryan, Alex, Alex Proyas.
Alex Proyas, yeah.
Yeah, Proyas. Yeah,
It's his, yeah, it was his first film. He was big into music videos at the time. He directing music videos along with David Fincher and a lot of other up and coming directors at that time. Yeah, Alex, Australian filmmaker.
Yeah, but he took they took a slightly different approach with the movie, and we might get into spoiler territory here in a little bit. But suffice to say, the comic book is, I think, a little bit more on that pain, and that love is forever. True love is forever kind of side. Than I mean, the movie is too, but the comic book is much more short with it, direct and brutal.
Right, and it comes from real pain.
Right.
James O'Barr, he written and drew it as a kind of a therapy session. His young girlfriend at the time, fiance, they were getting ready to be married, got killed in a car accident by a drunk driver. And so it was his way of dealing with the grief of losing her. And in the comic book, he draws his love, Eric's love, is drawn just like his girlfriend from that time. So it's sort of a tribute to her, but also dealing with the grief of loss of her and trying to find sense of it, making it a revenge tale. I guess with being killed by a drunk driver, you don't have that outlet to take your revenge. So it's sort of like it took him a long time to do. He said, he was working as a mechanic at the time, and it took him 9 years to draw and write this.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was, he started it in the early 80s, and like Mike said, it didn't finish it until 89. And then it was a local comic book guy, a comic book store owner. He saw this talent. He's from Detroit, and so this Detroit comic book shop owner, he got several people locally and formed this comic book company called Caliber Comics. Okay. And they're the ones that first published this.
Cyrillic letter of.
Very cool. Sorry, I was screwing with the thing. Screwing. I'm half reading it, half enjoying the show. But no, sorry. Yeah, Joe. Kind of component back, but he did a very good job, and obviously it found the eye some way in Hollywood. I don't have the backstory in that, but it was adopted.
They kind of shopped it around, and he was having kind of doubts on whether or not it would get made properly. And one Hollywood executive envisioned it as a piece for Michael Jackson and would make it into a musical. And James O'Barr broke up laughing at him, and then he realized the guy was serious. I was like, oh man. No. so it was with a very glad heart that it became a property that Alex Proyas and Brandon Lee decided to spearhead and make. And I think when they got behind it, it got made within the next couple of years. So it was sort of like kind of a train engine. Once it got started, it got in development very quick and got made very quickly.
Yes, it did. Yeah, and sadly, we're kind of haven't really talked about it much, but sadly during the shooting of this is when Brandon Lee fatefully was shot dead on the set, which unfortunately it almost tanked this whole thing. But they were able to, thankfully they did not tank it, and they decided to use a body double for film, resuming the rest of the things that they had to finish up, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we're
he had 3 days left on the shoot.
It's so sad.
So yeah.
So very sad. But Brandon Lee, also famous. His dad, also Bruce Lee, also had there it was an up and coming family, but in '94. But in any case, I was going to go to the posters here to kind of show off the visuals here of the film. This movie has one of the things I was reading about this, and it shows through the cinematography of the world building that this does so excellently. Just like the other, just like Outland did in its own right. Although this is a whole other level of execution than Outland was for various reasons. But one, the technical set that when they actually did the miniatures for some of the practical shots, like when they were doing the flyover sequence, that sort of thing. And those stood up and are very, very well done.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very, very small budget, and so yeah, they couldn't do a lot of things, but they still wanted to do them. So all those flyovers, like Mike said, was done in miniature, and if it was done incorrectly, if they made it look like some Godzilla landscape, it would have been kind of comical. But they knew how to light it and to make it look like a world. And the opening scene where you're kind of flying in, you automatically see it as miniature, but it works. It creates this sort of a world. It's not our world, but it's a world that you can actually live in. And like I said, it gives it that sort of elevated sense of a kind of a comic book spirit to it, but a dark comic book. It kind of lends. It's sort of like it's a first for a lot of things. It kind of brought into focus a lot of the goth elements from earlier movies, like maybe the Batman movies and a lot of Tim Burton movies. But Tim Burton had kind of a childlike kind of fascination with with the things, and this kind of brought it into adulthood and kind of took away all of most of the cuteness of it and made it extremely dark.
Well,
but there is some light in it as well.
Well, yeah, very dark, but also very, very young, like an adult young, not teenager, but a young adult. It's still naivete everywhere. But you have or there it's welcoming, even though it's gritty, dark world. It still has this kind of this almost like a inky blue gray sheen of supernatural, I guess. With it is kind of what I got from it, like kind of the tone, like it has like another layer on over the camera that as you watch this play out. And of course, we're kind of skipping over the bones of the story, and the bones of the story are essentially the same. Although the movie's a slightly different, but it's the same premise. You have Eric, and his fiance, or they were going to get married on Halloween, I suppose, or Devil's Day, whatever. And then
Devil's Night,
Devil's Night. Unfortunately, he is murdered savagely, and she is beaten and treated very savagely, and then later dies. But I guess in the movie, they think he's dead, but he isn't he in the waiting room he's with her, her pain. I might be misconstruing the comic book and the movie here. Bear with me.
Well, it's he was
I had that wrong.
He's
he
the one that
right away.
It's switched in the comic book. He's the one that lasts 30 hours. Whereas in the movie, she's the one that's in the ER for 30 hours and ends up dying. But they both end up dying.
Right.
And he comes back for revenge, not for himself. He comes back for revenge for his lost love, Shelley, and in the name of their eternal love. So yeah, it's very young, kind of it grips older teenagers and the people in their 20s where they're feeling love the most deepest, and yeah, it kind of hits hard, and for that group. Now I kind of came into this movie. Anytime we cover a movie here that I love, I kind of come in as an adversary to it, because these are the movies I love, but if I'm going to take a critical eye, I kind of need to kind of pull myself away and start seeing if I could pull apart the movie and deconstruct it and kind of be the bad guy to it. And I started in on the movie. I was like, oh yeah, there's the miniatures. The acting maybe not quite as good as I remember it, and
Sure.
I start finding these little things that I could pick at it, but within the first 10 minutes of the movie, I'm deep into it again, and I love the thing, and it completely washes over me. So I can't be critical. I can't take a critical eye to this because it's so much a part of me and so much deeply ingrained. It's just, yeah, it's a part of me.
Yeah, no, I understand completely. Yeah, and as I kind of messed the transition up there, but they both die, and then a year later, he comes
a year
back
later.
from. Now that's a little bit different from the comic book, but it's not a 1-to-1. They don't stray too far from it, but in the movie that we're talking about today, he is awakened, comes back from the dead to avenge his loved one. There is injustice when he went to rest, and you're introduced to this. It doesn't spend very much time on it. This crow, some kind of thing happened, and of course the bad guy villain's sidekick or whatever. She's kind of like a voodoo medicine woman, whatever, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, voodoo kind of thing, that kind of set the stage, but they don't spend too much time on the details, and then it's more imagery and the vibe and the sense that tells you what's going on with your own eyes as you get as you so eloquently put, within 10 minutes you're slipping right in and enjoying that seat, and I'm right behind you. I would have a very hard time criticizing this, aside from to want to preserve it as it was, and of course it has not gone anywhere. It's here. I think I would have. It would be nice to see a higher quality version, maybe put out one day. But aside from that wish, it still holds up very well. And you like, God, Brandon Lee was gonna go places. I don't think that's anybody doubts that.
Yeah, the lot of the people, the interviews I watched, they said, yeah, he was a star, but he wasn't quite a star yet, but he was a star in this movie, and he was had that presence about him that, and in fact, I think Edward Pressman, the producer of the movie, had already signed him to a multi-film deal. The only other person he had done that with was Arnold Schwarzenegger when he signed him for Conan.
Oh, really?
So yeah, he had
eye for talent.
A lot of yeah, exactly. But yeah, so yeah, the movies. This was one of the first movies that kind of embraced sort of this gothic element. It was sort of, and I think it kind of latched upon this growing kind of goth movement and a goth industrial movement that was kind of forming at the time, but I think it made it explode in a way that maybe not would have exploded. And the comic book comes from that as well. Like I said, James O'Barr, he drew from personal grief, but as he drew it, he was listening to the music, the early goth and punk music at the time. And in fact, his art of the Crow Eric, he based the face off of Peter Murphy, which is the singer of Bauhaus, and the body of the crow in his movement, he based it on Iggy Pop. So, but he was listening to a lot of The Cure, Bauhaus, and Joy Division at the time. Joy Division, I think at times, Eric in the comic looks like Ian Curtis, who's the singer of Joy Division, who committed suicide way too early. But yeah, it's all built on sort of that kind of dark gothic kind of vibe to it, and I'm glad that the movie was able to do that. A lot of times when Hollywood grabs a hold of a property, they want to change it,
Right.
very much want to change it, and maybe kind of, I guess, leave their mark. I think our interview with Joe Lansdale, he said that every Hollywood guy has a kind of a take on it, whether good or bad. But like Joe said, hey, the book's published, it works. Why are you gonna mess around with it? But
yeah, what exactly are you gonna do to it? Unless you are this Steven Spielberg, or a Ridley Scott, or James Cameron. And
yeah.
Rules are different for those folks than they are for you or me.
Mhm.
Never mind us. To maybe we can do a break dance and get 0 points. Cultural reference.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's about time for me to break out my boomer juice and crack it open here. But yeah, it's one of those movies, and they don't have a lot of digital, though they didn't originally going to have a lot of digital effects. Of course, when Brandon died, they then had to digitally put him in, and it was sort of like
scenes,
state of the art kind of doing that. It's impressive. I didn't, on watching it again, I didn't remember which scenes he was not in, and then on looking at the extras and stuff, it made sense. But the way they kind of worked their way around all of that, it works quite well. You wouldn't notice if you saw the movie. You wouldn't know that the main actor died before finishing it.
No, I'm right there with you. I just kept trucking right through it, and all the way out to the end, where you kind of see this evolution of this character, this carrying all this emotional weight, I suppose, or power, which powers him, which is essentially he kind of becomes a construct of not quite like Spawn. Not quite that to that level, but it's a very subdued version of that kind of vengeance type. Come to life. He essentially in the comic book, and this is like where they really diverge. The comic book is much more brutal. It's pretty much a straight right on the line. Well, the other thing too that the movie doesn't do that the comic book does is the main character Eric, he forgets what happened, and then he kind of slowly gets his puzzle piece memory, kind of memento type kind of style. He kind of gets it back over time, and then it culminates into the thing, and then it's pretty much all she wrote. But obviously by the time you get to that point though, you are treated to this great artwork in and of itself. I think the artwork was very great, and what we have up on screen is not from the official comic. It is just a fan made art that I found because I like the coloring. I bet it looks cool. And while we're kind of belaboring the point here and talking about the difference between the movie, now in the movie, he is invulnerable until he isn't. So maybe kind of tell us the rules around that one, or in your own words, I suppose.
Well, I got the 4K new 4K of the movie, and it has a lot of the extras. It's got 2 commentary tracks, one by Alex Proyas, the director, and also by Jeff Most and John Shirley, one of the Jeff Most is one of the producers, and John Shirley's the co-writer. And then it has a bunch of interviews. It has like a half-hour interview, kind of documentary interview with James O'Barr. That's from the early 2000s when the DVD came out. But yeah, so yeah, it was. They kind of go into what they had to do to finish the movie. They weren't going to finish it without the approval of Brandon's fiance, Eliza, and she gave them the go-ahead to finish and do the movie, and that's why it's dedicated to her and Brandon at the end.
Okay.
But yeah, the whole idea, they kind of had to play around with it. The original conceit was that Eric is known as Eric only as Eric in the comic book, and the movie they added the last name Draven, which is kind of perfect. I mean, what other kind of gothic name would work better than Eric Draven? But as Eric is returned to life, there was going to be an additional character called the skeleton cowboy, or the cowboy skeleton, who's sort of a character in the comic book, but he was going to have a larger role in the movie, and he was sort of going to be kind of like a spirit guide. The crow couldn't speak, the actual crow, but the skeleton cowboy was going to be sort of kind of give Eric his mission and sort of the rules of the game, I guess, so to speak. But they only got to film one of the scenes with the skeleton cowboy, and they were, I think, they were going to film the rest of those, but Brandon was killed. So yeah, and also the skeleton cowboy didn't look good. They decided that yeah, he didn't look good, but the basic conceit was going to be that Eric was only brought back to service the dead, and anytime he started to help the living, he would start losing his powers. So when so there was going to be a scene, an extended scene, when Eric is kind of fighting Fun Boy, the kind of the heroin addict, and his girlfriend. When Eric starts to help her to become a better mother, he starts to lose his power, and Fun Boy kind of attacks him back and actually cuts him and wounds him, and then towards the end, towards the end of the movie, the bad guys realize, or think they realize, that the crow, the actual crow, was what he was getting his power from, and so the ending was actually, the original ending was kind of a mess, because the bad guys thought that the crow was the actual focus of his power, but it was actually whether or not he was serving his revenge or not. So when they took that element out of him helping humans and trying to save Sarah, that's when he became completely vulnerable. Taking that element out and just leaving it solely on the crow, it kind of simplified things. It makes sense.
No, it did. Also, just and I think obviously you kind of things kind of get amplified up a little bit more maybe when something tragic happens on a set of a movie, but it's very funny how, and you have a very special treat later in the show, part of our outro when we wrap up here, that we put together, that we'll share, that Tom found. It's very apropos to this, but he plays the character so well. So when he's talking about death and the kind of it's an extra meta cathartic something, or I don't know, it reminds you of the fragility of what they're it just adds another layer. I don't know how to put it better than that. Many others have done a better job of doing that than I could, but just like this, just like his performance underlines everything you go through the movie and you see over the shoulder, you kind of he's transitioning from his pain to the rain is we all get rained on, the saying, but the music also is substantial. I would say it had everyone. It had Nine Inch Nails. It had it had the Cure. Yeah, had Stone Temple Pilots. I don't think it had Pearl Jam, but damned if it didn't.
No. Yeah, it was one of those soundtracks, and it was one of the first of its kind, if not the first, where all of the music was made for the movie.
Actually,
Nine
made
Inch
for
Nails,
the movie, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And they actually tried to get New Order, which are the surviving members of Joy Division, to come back and do a cover of one of Joy Division's songs, but they couldn't do it because they were recording their album at the time. So they got Nine Inch Nails to do the great cover "Dead Souls" of Joy Division. But yeah, it was one of those where before this movie, a lot of the soundtrack with it would have rock and roll that everybody liked. It was a song that everybody liked already. Throw it in the movie and make everybody feel good. But this is one of those first where they kind of got to those indie bands that could use that exposure, and it kind of elevated both of the music and the movie together and made it sort of a event, because some of the people got the soundtrack just for the music, and maybe then ended up falling in love with the movie as well, and vice versa. Right. It was sort of a kind of a symbiotic relationship. Right. But yeah, the album was perfect for me. I loved all the bands on it.
I was wrong about Nirvana. I don't know why. It was probably because of the crush of 90s bands that I couldn't help but think about them. But sorry, anyway, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Very good. The Violent Femmes, Rollins band, Henry Rollins, Pantera.
Yep.
Very much. I didn't really grow to love Pantera until much later. Probably I don't know. I don't know if I. Well, anyway, we all have our own journeys with music, but this is great to hear.
Yeah, and the bands. There's two bands play live in the movie. The first one being Medicine. They wanted a female-led band at the beginning of the movie, and then later on they have a male lead band. The female band, they were going to have Curve in it, which would have been mind-blowing for me because I loved Curve at the time, but they were an English band, and I think with passports and everything, they weren't able to get them there to film it. So they got Medicine, which is a great band in and of themselves, and they did a great job in the movie. And then later in the movie, My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult did a great song, After the Flesh. That works perfect in that scene. And the chaotic nature of this movie is so cool because they kind of played the music for the Thrill Kill Cult band on their way. They were flying out. They filmed this in backlots of North Carolina, and so they were flying the band out there to be in the movie. And the lead singer was writing lyrics on a piece of paper on the flight there, and they get to the movie set, and they record it there. And they're still fighting over what lyrics they should use for the movie. So it was all, it kind of a bit of chaos, but it all worked out,
It matches it certainly matches the energy and the spirit of a lot of the the entire movie, the whole vibration of the damn thing.
Yeah, and this is the first time the Cure actually wrote for a movie. And the song Burn, and that's a classic song by the Cure.
Absolutely, yeah, I have that. And I'll put this kind of a cool website I found that talks about it. Very cool. It looks like it's a forum site, but anyway, the Crow became a
Mm-hmm.
significant cultural phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Many adaptations. I think there's a few derivatives from it, which I have not seen, nor probably will I. I'm not saying that
Yeah,
to be mean
one
or
of the more interesting things I found out during Alex Proyas' commentary is that they're in their mind they very much were thinking of sequels as they filmed it, and
really.
if
They were
Brandon
very
Lee had
smart.
not died, Alex Proyas and Brandon Lee would have most likely had done a Crow sequel, which I don't know if that's good or bad or not that we didn't get that, but yeah, the sequels that we got, I didn't watch any of them, and definitely not that dreadful TV series that they came out with, The
Right.
Crow, Stairway to Heaven,
No.
that mess.
Didn't touch
But
that.
but I did read some of the novels that they came out with, and some of the comic books, follow-up comic books, because that had I guess more of that kind of indie sense to it, and it sort of gave it kind of makes sense because they didn't do the Eric Draven didn't come back. It was the Crow spirit letting other people have their revenge. But that's always going to be a lesser tell than the original tell, you know.
Well, that and then yeah, and there of course there's 2024 version that's going to be out. So I will probably not be seeing it. And I will let it kind of float along, and then if I hear something about it, maybe revisit it. Maybe it's who knows.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be there. I'm sure it'll be its own wonderful contribution to the culture. But I will say,
Yeah,
who knows if a Brandon Lee could have been a repeat back to back, knock it out of the park. Because the movie made quite a bit of money. It actually made it warranted, in Hollywood's terms, I'm sure it warranted more than enough of a look for to be greenlit for a second or third project, maybe. But in the same way, though, that we fell in love with John Wick, this could have been the goth,
John Wick.
yeah. I mean, we say goth is kind of a punchline sometimes, is a one-word punchline from that time and era. But I think it could have worked. Who knows? Yeah, Alex Proyas certainly pulled off this one very well, very elegant.
Yeah, and he followed it up with another classic, Dark City, which is another kind of classic goth type movie. But yeah, it's one of those movies. The Crow is sort of like it's always going to be with us. Yeah, the remake that's coming out, that's kind of what kind of triggered me to revisit The Crow.
Sure.
And I've seen trailers for the new one, and yeah, like I said, it doesn't interest me, but you can't. I think they're trying to recapture that the excitement of the original Crow, which that excitement sort of and I might be biased, but it was something more than the movie. It was sort of a cultural swelling, this, like I said, this kind of underground music that everybody was loving, this underground comic book scene that everybody was loving. It was building off of that, and it was sort of this natural growth into the sort of goth sensibility that just sort of exploded with The Crow. And there was a lot of things that inspired The Crow, but also The Crow went on to inspire, like the whole black leather trench coat that was first done in The Crow, with the hero or anti-hero having the black leather, which went on to inspire The Matrix and all sorts of things. And then the soundtrack to this movie very much inspired The Matrix. The John Woo kind of Tokyo, Hong Kong action that the movie had, that was inspired the the action of The Matrix. So there's obviously other movies that it inspired as well, but yeah, it's got a lot of stuff there that keeps being pulled from, and even there's like a police car chase scene in it done with miniatures that works, you know. That whole thing, it works, you know, and you wouldn't be able to pull apart that it was done with miniatures. And there's some cool cameos in it. There's a scene where Eric blows up a pawn shop, and one of the people stealing a TV is James O'Barr, the artist writer of The Crow. And then there's a scene where Eric shows up at the gang's hideout, and there's a big shootout. One of the guys that gets killed is one of the co-writer of the script, David Scow. And I say David Scow because you could either pronounce his name's either David Scow or David Show. And all the stuff from this movie, the commentaries, they called him Scow. And I thought it was Show, and then I was corrected as Scow. But in our interview with Joe, I think Joe said it was Show. So I don't know. So I apologize, David, if I messed up your name. I follow him on Facebook, so shout out to David Show or Scout. He's an amazing writer. If you like The Crow and you like that horror kind of sensibility that The Crow has, David's writing is amazing. You should check that out. And like I said, he's one of the forefathers and actually named the scene Splatterpunk. Yeah, David J. Scow.
Yeah,
there.
Well, we would absolutely would welcome you on to apologize and to learn how to say your last name properly. So hats off to you, sir, if you're out there.
Yeah, and just a little bit about the script. John Shirley actually early on helped write the script with Jeff Most. And then when they started filming, I think John pissed off one of the Hollywood guys or the development guys and got kicked off of it, and David got put on it. So they got the co-writing script or the credits, but I don't think they actually worked together on the actual script. But
that's a shame.
And that's why David's in the movie and John's not, but with the cameo. But yeah. And Jeff Most, I think he did a lot of the writing as well, but he's also the producer. And I think there's like a conflict in Hollywood where you can't be the writer and the producer. So his writing credit didn't get to show up because of that conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. This one, if you can see it in 4K, even better. Like Tom cheated and didn't share his version.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, but well, this is like one that you can never go wrong with, really. I mean, it reminds me of that era. Having lived through that, I'm sure this is going to be an experience for a lot of people who are our age if they turn this on and rewatch it. I think it is always a good time to rewatch the original, so to speak, and even better, go a step further and go pick up the I mean, we'll have a couple links where you can go in the public domain and read the comic book there. I think we will, but in any case, I found it on Archive, whatever. But in any case, this one is good to.
Yeah, and it's a piece of art, and the thing about art is it could be inspired by tragedy. Like I said, James O'Barr was inspired by the death of his fiance, right. And Anne Rice, she was inspired by the death of her daughter to write Interview with a Vampire. And there's some great pieces of art that have been inspired by that, and it's a way, even though this is sort of a simplistic tale, a tale that is very comic book in nature, but it's usually those simple tales that kind of get down to the heart of the meat of the matter are the ones that resonate the most and make you feel, no matter what time, what point in your life that you see this, and it still has that same impact that it did, when I first saw it, which was surprising. Like I said, I hadn't seen this in a long time. I think the last time I watched it was on DVD when I got it originally. So seeing it now in 4K, and it looking probably the best it's looked in forever. Yeah, it still had that same emotional impact. And one of the things that makes it unique is it's not really a horror movie, but it does have those tropes to it. It's not really an action movie, but it has those tropes to it. It's not really a love story, but it has those tropes to it. It's that it's sort of like that thing in limbo. And one of the fun things about The Crow is that if you skew it a little bit differently, it could be a horror movie. Eric Draven's very much in the line of Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers, this creature that comes back from the dead, and it's just his motivations that makes him more of a anti-hero, or it's more of a hero than say Freddy Krueger. If Freddy decided to kill off the bad people, maybe he might not be so bad.
Right. Well, and of course you have his yes, he's undead, but he still has his personality, or aspects of his personality that show that there's a humanity there, wrestling with this thing that was awakened in him to bring him back from resting in peace to disturbing him, and then how he symbolically and and physically transfers that to the big baddie. A little bit of a spoiler there, but I'm not gonna I won't finish the rest, but literally transfers here I can't remember what he said, but he said something semi clip-esque, whatever, for the hero or anti-hero, as it were. But tragedy befalls everyone, kind of. I think that is the thing here, although it does kind of get a little thin sometimes around the edges for setting up the baddies, but nothing's perfect. That's about the only thing I would pick on, really. But really, I mean, go back to the comic book and how they set that up, and is it really any different? Not really. I mean, so I can't really fault it for that, either one, to be honest.
Yeah, in the last third of the movie, where the Sarah becomes in peril, it's kind of the weakest part of the movie. You kind of lose the thrust of the original, and the original 2/3 of it. In the last third, I guess they wanted to show the vulnerability of the guy's not completely immortal, but it kind of loses it a little bit, and it almost becomes almost like a buddy cop movie with the cop being a little bit more
showdown, right?
And the little joking back and forth, but yeah, the big thing about this being a movie as opposed to a comic book, you kind of have to fill out the details and beef up some characters. The character Sarah, the sort of girl on the street, kind of skateboarding around, kind of wise beyond her years. It's kind of developed more in this movie, and she's actually done very well by the actress that plays her. Sure. And Ernie Hudson, I forgot Ernie Hudson was in this movie. He does a tremendous job.
He's great.
He kind of lightens it, like Alex Proyas says. He's kind of the guy that you see on the screen. You immediately feel like you know the guy, and you want to go out and have a beer with him after,
you trust him.
And he has that presence of being a tremendously likable guy, and that kind of eases some of the heavy-heartedness of the movie, which when you're dealing with this gothic tragic love story, you kind of have to balance it out. So you can't be down well, you can, but it's best to kind of have that room to breathe, right, in the story, whereas the comic book is you never get a breather between all of the action and the darkness of it.
Yeah, I think we're kind of coming up here on all there is to say about this particular movie. Go see it. Go check it out. It very fine edition. I'm glad that we got around to it. I'm glad I'm even better. You recommended it, and that we decided to go through.
Yep. Yeah, and just one last thing about it. James O'Barr, very affected by the death of Brandon Lee. In fact, he had said that, at some points he regrets even writing The Crow because it led to the death of,
no.
It was inspired by the death of his fiancee, but then it led to the death of Brandon Lee. So it's kind of with that heavy heart. And I know the actor that actually had used the gun that actually shot Brandon Lee, he was never the same, and he passed away as well a while back. But yeah, so it is a movie that was inspired by tragedy, which in and of itself is also a tragedy. But yeah, but we do have some inspirational words from Brandon that I found within the extras of the movie. So hopefully whoever owns the movie doesn't ding us for playing this. But I also found the clip on YouTube. I thought we would play out the movie like Mike has teased us with, or our show with the little clip.
Yeah, and before we do that,
I was very much moved by his words in this.
Yeah, no, I had to stop what I was doing and watch it. it draws you in. But before we go and we say goodbye for this week, we want to say thank you so much. If you could please, if you're seeing us out on Twitter or YouTube, we would love it if you could give us a follow, a like, subscribe on our YouTube channel. We'd appreciate that very much. It always helps. We do this thing for free. It's something that you can always do. That is a wonderful boost to us. If you, wherever you come in on, whether it's this video or another video, we really appreciate all the eyeballs that we get. And as we do this thing every week, with a few breaks here quarterly, or as needed. It'll be 3 years in November. That's coming up. We have to plan out something cool and fun for that. But first, Tom, as always, is on the case on Reddit. You will find our account up there, as well as X, the FirstLastNerdom. Always there. Say hello. Drop a hi. I am on ApeIt.Ink, where take a heavier side of life, whatever, current events, that sort of thing, or entertainment, YouTube picks that I find, pretty much anything that's heavier that I like to put out to the world or write about, talk about. Also on Twitter, you can find me as well, or X, whatever we're calling it this week or this decade, ApeIt_Ink. You can see us out there, but always will be able to find us first and foremost on YouTube. Thank you so much. I've been Mike, and I know Tom is also excited to have you here, and we would love it if you could join us next week. And as soon as we get off of this, we're going to kind of battle test a little bit of the equipment here, because we've had some changes, and I believe I have my crap dialed in to where we can so check us out probably in a weekend or so, or maybe a random Lex play for Fallout 76 or other cool titles that we want to get into. But anything you want to say before we go?
No, thanks, Mike, for the new cam. You can maybe see me a little bit more crisper here. I think the colors aren't as blown out as they normally are. So we're always trying to improve and do our thing here.
So it's working for you good. And okay, so it's been this whole time. Okay, very cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, I definitely had a good step up in quality because you recently upgraded your equipment, your laptop. So that was quite a improvement. So we're doing our parts here, and we're getting better every day and smarter every day. And I think,
and we pass the savings along to you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll see you next week. I've been ML.
I'm Tom, and may your trail be free of road apples.
There's this wonderful quote from the book Sheltering Sky, where he says, "Because we do not know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. And yet everything happens only a certain number of times, and a very small number, really. How many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood, an afternoon that is so deeply a part of your being that you can't even conceive of your life without it? Perhaps 4 or 5 times more, perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20, and yet it all seems limitless.